Hello, my name is Stephanie van Dullemen and I joined the P6 studio of designing a cultural center for Reutov. My design is called the local living room of Reutov, and by this video I would like to explain a bit more about my personal approach to this project and some further explanation of how I came to my concept and how I translated this into a building. The first thoughts of a cultural center for me were really that the building should be an inspirational, familiar and welcoming place. A place that is interesting for every age group, not only for children and elderly, and a place that is really approachable, where people with different backgrounds can find a certain common ground. To really get a better understanding of the location, the surroundings and the people that live in the area and use the public space every day, we went with our team to visit Moscow and Reutov. This really gave me a lot of insight in the history behind cultural centers and how they are being used right now. For example, the detailing in the interiors of public spaces with all of the beautiful materials, different fabrics and colors and graphic textures I found really interesting. And this was quite a contradiction with the exteriors of these places, where the facades were really closed off and not very inviting. Also, you could not really see what was going on inside. Another thing I noticed was the high amount of parking lots, where I saw very little space left around the residential housing blocks to enjoy really the outside space. And what struck me as well was how often shopping malls are being seen as a common way of spending free time. And this brought me to the question, what do people actually do after work and in the weekends? How do they spend time at home, and what does the average housing typology even look like? I found out that the most used space in the house itself was the kitchen area, the most warm and cozy space of the house, but often this is also the smallest space I saw. Too small actually to meet your friends and family. And this way of living really struck me and gave me a starting point for my conceptual idea to create a cultural center for the local neighborhood, which will function as an extension of their living room. A place where, next to concert shows, lectures, art and dance studios for the bigger audiences, there's also space for the local neighborhood to make homework, cook together, celebrate national events with family and friends, or to just read a book. A place where you don't feel obligated to interact or to participate, but what is freely approachable. Creating the extension of the living room brought me to the conceptual idea of an izba pechka, a traditional Russian stove which is a multifunctional central element in traditional housing. And it is being used for cooking, drying clothing, sitting together and even for sleeping. So this izba pechka really functions as the central heart and was the inspiration for my design concept. A parallel study was on the research for the location of my building. I decided it needed to be on a cross-section where the north part will get a better connection with the south part and where the residential neighborhood gets a better connection with the pond. I came to the conclusion that the existing parking lot was functioning as a border between the neighborhood and the pond. The parking buildings were blocking actually the connection to the pond. I decided it was needed to remove this barrier and create high quality space for people instead of cars. What I did was moving the parking underground and placing my cultural building on top, where it works together with its surroundings. A principle in my design process was to use the volume of my building to activate street corners. This resulted in two big squares in front of the entrances of the building, where one of the squares becomes an opening towards the pond. The building shape evolved by the footprint in its urban context and by the idea of the izba pechka, the central heart and living room of the building. I translated this idea into a central element of the building, which goes through a transition from public open space to semi-public spaces to even more private spaces. By the use of material, this transition is even further visible. For the public open spaces I used a harder material, like concrete. For the semi-public I used warm wood material, and for the private spaces a more dark red marble stone. The section of the building shows how the local living room works. The lower levels are considered as public space and totally open, with its large voids and long sidelines between levels. The semi-public space contains out of large stairs. This is really the central heart where people can enjoy each other's company, cook together, meet each other, but also work or relax. The stairs can be also used as a sitting element. The private spaces are placed on the sides of the central heart, tucked away on the side corridors, where there are more cozy and quiet spaces. All the way up in the building is an open public space for the bigger events. So, a local living room for the city of Reutov. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate that our studio got the opportunity to present our work for the ARC Moscow, and I hope that my idea of creating a local living room for Reutov can be used as some kind of inspiration for city makers, planners, architects, you name it. And thanks again.